All right, today we are diving into Robert Greene's The 33 Strategies of War. Now, I know what you might be thinking. That title sounds intense. But stick with me, because this book isn't really about tanks and trenches. It's about navigating the battles we all face every single day.
And to really get what this book is about, let's start with a feeling that I think is pretty universal. I mean, really think about it. The constant stream of emails, the deadlines that seem to come out of nowhere, the friction with coworkers, or even just that internal struggle to stop procrastinating. Life can feel like chaos, right? Like you're constantly on the defensive, just reacting to whatever gets thrown at you.
And that's the absolute core of this book. Greene says, look, we're all on this social battlefield, but winning isn't about having the most money, the biggest title, or the fanciest tech. It's all about superior strategy. It's about psychology, understanding how other people tick, and just as important, how you tick, so you can actually plan your moves instead of just reacting.
Okay, so what does it actually mean to think like a strategist? We hear that term thrown around all the time, but what does it really look like?
Well, at its heart, strategy is just the art of seeing the bigger picture. It's about taking all the forces you have at your disposal, your time, your skills, your focus, your energy, and pointing them all in one single purposeful direction.
You know, Greene has this brilliant metaphor. He says most of us live down here, in what he calls tactical hell. It's the fog of daily life. You're just reacting to this email, that meeting, this crisis. There's no perspective. But a strategist, they climb the mountain. And the higher you climb, the clearer the view becomes. You stop just reacting to things in the short term, and you start seeing the whole landscape, the long-term vision. That's grand strategy. That's clarity.
And here's the kicker. Before you can strategize against any external obstacle, the first war you have to win is the one with yourself. It's the war against your own emotions, your impulse to react without thinking, and your tendency to get lost in the chaos of the moment. Self-control, that's the real foundation of any good strategy.
So let's make this real. Let's pull two powerful strategies right from the pages of the book that you can start thinking about today. This is just the taste of the 33, but they are game changers. First up, a strategy that is all about creating an unstoppable sense of focus and momentum, and it's inspired by one of the most incredible stories from literary history. Let me introduce you to the writer Fyodor Dostoevsky. By 1849, he's a rising literary star in Russia. But he gets caught up with some political dissidents, and he's arrested. And then, on a freezing cold December morning, he and the others are marched out into a public square to be executed by firing squad. He is absolutely convinced that he has only minutes left to live.
The soldiers take aim, and at the very last second, a messenger gallops in with a pardon from the Tsar. It was all a sham, a mock execution meant to terrify them. But for Dostoevsky, something inside him had fundamentally changed. That night he wrote to his brother, saying the thought of all the time he'd wasted was pure torture. Facing death gave him this incredible, electrifying sense of purpose. He served his sentence, came back, and wrote his masterpieces, Crime and Punishment, The Brothers Karamazov, with a fire he never had before. He vowed to never waste another second.
Dostoevsky had been placed on a psychological death ground. This is a concept from the ancient military strategist Sun Tzu. He literally advised generals to sometimes place their own armies with their backs to a river or a cliff, no escape route. Why would you do that? Because when retreat is not an option, people find a spirit and a focus they never knew they possessed. It's do or die.
So here is the powerful lesson for us. You can create your own death ground, without the firing squad, thank goodness. How? Commit to your goal publicly so you'd be embarrassed to back out. Set a hard, non-negotiable deadline. Invest your own savings into the project. In other words, you burn the bridges behind you. When you raise the stakes like that, you force yourself to act with that same incredible, urgent focus.
Okay, now for our second strategy, which is almost the opposite. This one isn't about how to fight harder. It's about the wisdom of knowing when and if you should fight at all. This is King Pyrrhus. He was a brilliant Greek general, basically a mercenary, hired to stop the expansion of the Roman Republic. And he was really good at his job. He met the Romans in two huge, bloody battles, and he won both times. On paper, he was the victor. But his army was absolutely devastated. He lost his best commanders, his most loyal soldiers. And as he looked out over the fields of his dead and wounded after that second win, he famously said, "If we defeat the Romans in one more such battle, we shall be totally ruined."
And right there, the concept of a Pyrrhic victory was born. A victory that costs you so much, it's basically the same as a defeat.
And man, don't we see these Pyrrhic victories all the time? Think about it. Have you ever won a nasty argument but you destroyed a friendship in the process? Or maybe you got that big promotion, but the stress and the hours lead to total burnout. You launched the product, but it bankrupted the company. A true strategist always calculates the cost. They step back and ask, is this battle actually worth fighting, or will the so-called victory end up destroying me?
So, this all brings us back to that big question. If this is about office politics and personal goals, why on earth is the book called The 33 Strategies of War?
Well, the answer is pretty simple. War is the ultimate human laboratory for strategy. The stakes are literally life and death, so the lessons are written in blood, and the principles become crystal clear. The thinking process, planning ahead, managing limited resources, anticipating your opponent's moves, it's universal, whether you're commanding an army or just trying to launch a new app.
And that brings us to the final and I think the single most important takeaway from this entire way of thinking.
Look, at the end of the day, your greatest enemy isn't your competitor, it's not your boss, it's not a difficult client. Your greatest enemy is your own complacency. It's that cozy, comfortable feeling that you have endless time, that you can always start tomorrow, that there's always an easy escape route if things get tough.
And that right there is why all this matters. Strategic thinking is the antidote to complacency. It gives you the urgency of Dostoevsky on the death ground. It gives you the wisdom of Pyrrhus to count the costs. It gives you clarity.
So, the question isn't if you're in a battle. You are. We all are, every day. The real question is, will you just be a pawn on the board, constantly reacting to the chaos around you, or will you choose to be a strategist, the one who sees the whole board and shapes their own destiny? The choice is always yours.